Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome again to Syriana Analysis. I'm your host, Kevork Almassian. Thank you very much for tuning in to today's live streaming, guys. I appreciate you all, whether you are watching me on YouTube or on Rumble. Today, I was supposed to have an interview with a respected journalist who myself I admire a lot. Unfortunately, though, she couldn't join today's live streaming for some reason. It little bit irritated me because I was excited to have her on Syriana Analysis and discuss with her the recent developments, not only in West Asia, but also in different parts of the world, well knowing that her input would be very, very important for me and for you as well. But here we go again. I'm with you today on Syriana Analysis, and I'm going to improvise for you today's live streaming, just like yesterday. I will try to be as comprehensive as I can and as detailed as I can about an important, or actually three important topics that I wanted to cover with you today. And I'm going to answer to you based on my knowledge and my experience of what's happening nowadays in the region again. Please just let me know if you hear me clear and sound in the comments below. I was just updating the software of this Go XLR Mini, whatever it is, for this microphone to work properly. Haircut. No, there is no haircut. It's just a messy hair. I wanted to wear my cap, but then I didn't. So I'm without a hat today. By the way, before we start this conversation and this political podcast with you and the analysis with you, I would like to ask you something. If you know, like, I would like to have a hat, from the one that I was wearing yesterday, but to print, for example, Syriana Analysis, on the forehead. Do you know any company in Germany who does this, or maybe in Europe something international can ship? I would like to have like 2-3 different colors, really nice ones, quality ones, and then in the middle the logo of Syriana Analysis. Please let me know in the comments below. I would like to order this type of hats because I like hats, even if it's indoors. Guys, there is one thing that is I've been also thinking of in the past, let's say 10 months. All my knowledge before October 7 was something, and after October 7 was something else. Because after October 7, I realized tattoo it on your forehead. Okay. Somebody says tattoo it on your forehead. No, it's not going to happen. I don't have any tattoos on my body. After October 7, my comprehension of what's happening in the region started also to develop, especially when it comes to the Israeli approach vis-a-vis the Palestinians. I mean, it doesn't make sense for me, at least from a rational point of view, and someone who is following the international politics for a long time, for any politician or a group of politicians to act in a very destructive way for their own country and for their own nation before the neighbors, or for before harming their enemies, quote unquote, right? But what's happening in Israel is very interesting. You see that Netanyahu is completely and utterly destroying and self-suiciding his own nation, and you wonder why he's doing that. Like, is he a madman, or is he doing this in a calculated way? I was thinking about this. And is this really Netanyahu's decision? Is this really the deep state in Israel, or there are even higher powers above the powers that we can see with our tangible eyes, right? The powers that we can see with our tangible eyes are clear: the governments, the senates, the security, the military-industrial complex, etc., etc. But are there higher powers above these visible authorities that we think that they're the ones who take decisions when it comes to war and peace, and when it comes to big decisions such as committing genocide or ethnic cleansing? Those are really barbaric crimes. So is this conscious? Are they doing it consciously or unconsciously, or they are ordered to do it? Those are all the questions that I started to ask myself after October 7, because how can a crime be so blatant in front of our eyes and televised and on our TikTok and Instagram and Facebook and Twitter, X, etc., etc., And how is it possible to normalize these crimes? Like, I come from an Armenian background. I'm an ethnic Armenian, and I'm a third generation survivor of the Armenian genocide. And I thought that this type of crimes cannot be committed again, like 100 years later, because we have press, we have journalists, we have institutions, we have international organizations, we have international law. So it's impossible for such crimes to happen again, right? Logically speaking. But here we go. It's happening. It's happening not only in Palestine, it's happening in Sudan, it's happening in Congo. I think it's also happening in Myanmar. Please correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm not really expert on this. I'm just reading some of the news. There are horrible, horrendous crimes and horrendous, inhumane, barbaric acts inflicted upon ordinary people. Like, there are hundreds of thousands of people dead in Yemen, hundreds of thousands of people dead in Syria, hundreds of thousands of people dead in Sudan. And now we see in front of our eyes what's happening in Palestine. So we are on a boiled this situation is boiling every day, and all these atrocities happening in front of our eyes. It's like somebody just lost the brakes. You cannot really now hold the brakes and stop what's happening or even minimize the suffering. Now I will go with you to an article that I was reading today for Shamin Narwani, who's a brilliant journalist based in Beirut, and she's a columnist for The Cradle. But before that, I just want to give again a shout out to Welsh Republic podcast for his generous support, and also recommending you guys to go and subscribe to his podcast if you like to also listen to and watch interviews with different guests. It would be amazing also to give a support to Welsh Republic. Now, I was reading this article, and before I show you the article, I just have a wish that you would really focus with me on this, because it is there are some details that we have to really read it carefully and understand what's the argument of the authors of this article, and is Israel a rational state or it's a mad state? Because those are completely different things. Israel is acting in a mad way in Palestine, but is it because they're mad? Like, are they insane? Or is this a strategy and an approach that Israel decided to pursue for the sake of a greater strategy that it has in order to spread fear and deter its enemies? Those are two different things. If you're a madman who you wake up in the morning and you decided to commit a genocide or ethnic cleansing, you are a madman. Like, it's expected. But if you're a rational person and you commit a mad act like the one is happening right now in Palestine, then it means you planned it beforehand, and you have, let's say, a smart or clever approach in your mind that you want to inflict so much pain upon civilians in order to reach a geopolitical or strategic goal. Those are two different things. So, and of course, I'm very much interested in your opinions, guys, in the comments below. But first, let's go and read this article together. And you will be amazed by the amount of details in this article. So the authors titled the article by "Israel Isn't Crazy, It's Just Mad." So what does that mean? So basically, the authors Daniel Namour and Shamin Narwani, they say, since before its inception, Israel has very deliberately, very rationally pursued a mad strategy toward its foes and allies alike, training them to accept its bad behavior at all times. So during the night hours between the 30th and the 31st July, this was just 1 week ago, Israel targeted two top resistance axis officials for assassination, both unprecedented in seniority during this round of conflict. The first one was Fuad Shukr, he was the commander in Hezbollah, and the second one was Ismail Haniyeh, who was the head of the political bureau of Hamas in Tehran. In doing so, Tel Aviv violated a whole slew of international laws, diplomatic conventions, and customary practices that prohibit political assassinations, while glaringly violating the territorial integrity of two United Nations member states. Since its war on Gaza, Israel has rapidly gained global pariah status, rightfully so, not just because of its live streamed genocide that has killed at least 39,000 Palestinian civilians, over 16,000 of them are children, but also because of the unprecedented rulings and deliberations still underway at the International Criminal Court and the International Court of Justice over Israel's war crimes. So is Israel just crazy? Like, we are speaking here about two different things now. One, the horrendous war crimes televised on TV, that we can see it on TV, on our social media platforms. And then we have legal proceedings against Israel, not only in the International Court of Justice, which is the more neutral court belonging to the UN, but rather the ICC. And remember that the ICC is under the influence of the United States and the UK. And now the US and the UK are intimidating and threatening this court, the ICC, because they have a leverage over it, and some of the funding comes from them to this organization. And despite all this, Israel is now accused of committing genocide by the ICJ and by the ICC. And there is going to be arrest warrants against Netanyahu, Gallant, and other officials of Israel because of their horrendous war crimes they're committing in Gaza against the Palestinians. So is Netanyahu a mad person, or is he clever? Is he doing it deliberately, or only because he's a madman? So is Israel just crazy? Like, the simple answer is, of course, no. Now, recognizing its geographic, population, political, and economic shortcomings from the get-go, the Zionist project very calculatingly implemented something we can call the MAD strategy to attain its objectives and then punch well above its geopolitical weight class. MAD actually derives from textbook deterrence theory. So this is the quotation. Creating a threatening presence by having an aggressive reputation with the touch of madness will prevent your enemies from attacking you. They would not attack a person who takes his enemy with him if he falls. So this is what Israel is trying to portray itself, that it's a mad country, that if it's attacked, then Israel will unleash hell upon its enemies. So it's better for the enemies not to attack Israel because this country is mad and the officials of Israel are mad men. Therefore, you attack me, I attack you 100 times more. And if I'm going to fall, I will make sure that my enemies fall with me at the same time. So this is the madman strategy, right? So after the Palestinian, everything is written in this article, it's not mine, right? I'm quoting what is written in this article. It doesn't mean that I 100% endorse it, but this is what it's written. After the Palestinian resistance 7 October military operation last year, and just as US President Joe Biden was en route to Tel Aviv to lend his support to Israel, the occupation army struck Gaza's Al-Shifa hospital, killing hundreds of civilians seeking shelter and medical attention. The hit was by no accident, argue the authors. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu deliberately sought those optics. He wanted to corner the US president into displaying support for his policies, no matter how awful the atrocity is. This is a long practiced Zionist tactic to tame and groom targets to accept and expect Israeli bad behavior. This is to be honest with you, I didn't really open my eyes into this. Only after I read this article, I realized that, yes, Israel targeted Al-Shifa hospital deliberately, killed hundreds of civilians just when Biden was in his plane. Like he was in the skies flying to Tel Aviv in order to show his support and solidarity with the Zionist state. And while he's in air, Israel commits a horrendous massacre against unarmed Palestinians. And if you think about it, you have only two options. It's either that Netanyahu is a mad person or he did it deliberately. And I'm leaning to the argument that this is not like Netanyahu woke up in the morning because he's a madman, he decided to kill all these people. But in order to normalize this type of crimes, while the president of the United States, which is considered the greatest ally of Israel, is in air, and flying to Tel Aviv. So once Biden arrives in Tel Aviv, he's definitely not going to condemn Israel, especially just days after the October 7 events, which means what Netanyahu basically did by this massacre, he forced his ally, not only his enemies, but also his ally or the supposed ally in Washington, D.C., to accept such crimes and even be supportive of Israel despite these crimes. This is very, very important. It's a psychological warfare being perpetrated by the Israeli government, especially by the Netanyahu regime, against his foes and against his allies at the same time. And similar example, we can see that when Netanyahu also played this dangerous game with Russian President Vladimir Putin during the Syrian war. After every meeting with the powerful Russian head of state, the Israeli premier would launch hard strikes against Syria again to tame and groom the Russians to accept and expect Israeli bad behavior. Today, Israel employs the full spectrum of its mad strategy in its attacks on Palestinians in Gaza and across the West Bank: rape, murder, amputations, beheadings, torture with impunity. Allies, foes, and global populations are expected to accept the images and data and be ready for even worse. It is untrue that Tel Aviv acts irrationally. Implementing the MAD strategy is a rational decision for a small entity that needs to impose its oversized will on not only its neighbors, but on global powers and international institutions too. And here, I will just read a question that I received today on Instagram. And this was by an account asking me, he says, Kevork, can you please explain why Assad doesn't retaliate against Israel constantly bombing Damascus to target Iranians? I understand he isn't in the position for a war with Israel, but doesn't it show weakness to not defend against Israeli aggression on sovereign Syria? No hate, I'm just searching for the answer. And this is a brilliant question because now that we are speaking of Syria and Israel and Russia. So first of all, Israel doesn't only target Iranians in Syria, right? The 95%, even more, of the casualties are Syrians. So every time Israel targets any installations, posts, convoys in Syria, the vast majority of the casualties are Syrian army soldiers, and the vast majority of the casualties basically are from the air defense officers. The officers of the Syrian army who were trained for many, many years, let's say, in Russia, and they are operating the Panzer S-1s or the Buks or the S-200s, and I don't know if the S-300 is still operational in Syria, but these systems are all operated by Syrians, and the Israelis usually target these air defense systems and the batteries in order to stop the air defenses from working properly when the aggression is happening. Now, of course, there are Iranian advisors in Syria, but their numbers are with tens. Like we don't know an exact number, but there is no Iranian army in Syria, right? And there is no Iranian militia in Syria. There are no Iranians like fighting on the ground against any part or any so-called rebel group or against the Israel, etc., etc. No. There is no Iranian forces in Syria. There's Iranian advisors in this in this case. However, Iran, of course, also manages military operations in Syria to deliver arms to or logistical support to Hezbollah and to the Palestinian armed factions fighting against Israel in coordination and cooperation with the Syrian side. Now, there are videos posted by Hezbollah recently after October 7, and they're using different weapon systems, and they deliberately show when they are pressing the button of the weapon that it's written in Arabic that Ma'amel Difa Suri, or like it means like the Syrian Arab army factories. So those are basically constructed and in Syria. They don't send them as a one piece, they send them as pieces, and then Hezbollah assembles them in southern Lebanon and uses them against Israel. So this is mainly why Israel is bombing Syria, because there is tangible support going to Hezbollah, and from Hezbollah, this type of knowledge and experience and equipment is also going to the Gaza Strip, right? So Syria, by doing so, supporting both Hezbollah and the Palestinian groups in Gaza by proxy or in an indirect way. Therefore, the Israelis are bombing this. Now, from the Syrian point of view, Syria doesn't have an interest in opening an all-out war with Israel for many reasons. One, because the so-called insurgents, there are 60,000 of them in Idlib, there is like 60,000 of them in the eastern shore of the Euphrates, the so-called SDF, and they're waiting for such a war to move against the Syrian army positions. They are waiting desperately for anything to happen with Israel so they can move again and conquer cities in Syria. So the priority of Syria to keep the country intact, like stable, because there is Syrian army is overstretched, and this is something that the leader of Hezbollah said the other day during his speech, that we don't expect from Syria and we don't want from Syria to intervene directly in this conflict, because what Syria is doing on the military and logistical and intelligence levels are already enough for us, and we don't want to they don't want for Syria to fall into the trap of Israel, because once Syria intervenes in this war, then they will be the army will be completely engaged in an act of hostilities against Israel, and then these rebel groups, terrorists, etc., they will be revived again and occupy different cities. So no, Syria's interest is to finish the internal insurgency first, and then it can focus on Israel completely. But until then, it's a very dangerous situation for them. Now, of course, when we speak about deterrence, yeah, of course, if you don't respond to such aggressions and repetition of such aggressions against your country, then of course this destabilizes the deterrence of your country. However, Syria and Iran do not see only from this lens, from this angle. They also see it from a strategic lens. For example, if I want to say who has a strategic interest now in an all-out war, I would say Israel. Because Israel is in a position, it's a very vulnerable position that expansion of the war serves the interests of Israel, because it drags the United States into direct conflict with Iran. If Israel waits a few more years for Iran, Iran could develop a nuclear weapon. And if Iran has a nuclear weapon, or if Iran changes its nuclear doctrine and says, okay, I'm going to now enrich the uranium to 80%, so this takes another 6 months and then 1.5 years to build its first nuclear weapon, then Iran means that has a nuclear deterrence against Israel. And then Iran would be ready for such a direct confrontation with Israel. Because remember, we're speaking now about the madman strategy. And in this madman strategy, Israel could use a tactical or nuclear weapons against Iran. And this would be completely destructive for Iran. Of course, it will destroy the entire region as well. But we are now speaking of the madman, right? So the madman strategy. And it is possible for Israel to nuke Iran, but if Iran has nukes in the future, then there will be mutual deterrence between the both sides. Israel would not dare to attack Iran, and Iran would not dare to attack Israel, and both sides would establish mutually assured destruction equation and also mutual deterrence, that both sides wouldn't really engage in a direct conflict against each other. This is a very simple military equation that the North Koreans have used, Pakistan, India, and many other countries who acquired nuclear weapons just to deter their enemies, not to use them against their enemies, but just to deter their enemies. And it was successful. But of course, this is very, very dangerous as well, because it could go out of hands. Like they're trying to disintegrated the Russian Federation. They keep speaking about dividing Russia into smaller states. They keep talking about bombing the hell out of Iran and regime change war. And please remember, if these countries have nuclear weapons, like Russia has thousands of them, probably tens of thousands of them. If Iran acquires nuclear weapons and the Americans try to engineer a coup, regime change war, etc., this could be very, very dangerous scenario for the entire region and for the Iranians. So nuclear weapons are double-edged sword, for the countries who have nuclear weapons. It could be beneficial for those who want to secure the national security of their countries against American interventions. But at the same time, it could be very dangerous for the countries who have the weapon, and also for the neighbors and for the region and for the entire world, right? And with the presence of politicians such as Netanyahu and those who adopted the madman strategy, they could use such weapons, right? So this is very, very dangerous, in my opinion. I just want to give a shout out to Joseph. He says, may we not have to talk about Israeli crimes much longer. Unfortunately, this is the focus of the episode, my friend, because this is the main priority thing that we have to address when it comes to the West Asia. But I'm going to also speak about Syria at the end of this episode. Mainstream is propaganda says, I will send you a hat. Thank you so much. Send me an email. My email is on my YouTube channel. I would definitely respond to you. If you have any company or anything that I can buy a hat, I would be happily do that. So we spoke about this madman strategy, right, of Netanyahu. Now, I want to just continue a little bit with this article just before we go to another topic. The unhinged, this is according to the authors, right? Those are not my words. The unhinged, Talmud inspired, religious extremist, genocidal diatribes spilling onto TV screens from a broad range of Israeli officials and influencers can only be seen as deliberate. The occupation state has a tight censorship grip on military details, but it saw no calls to stem the flow of incriminating racist rants from its own officials. For strategic thinkers, this was just another escalation in Israel's time-worn mad strategy intended to groom populations into tolerating ever-worsening behaviors and shocking them into inaction. Netanyahu and co. are not mad men. All their cruel, mad moves are well studied and coldly premeditated. Their main aim is to reach a state genially summarized by strategy master Sun Tzu in the 4th century BC. When opponents are unwilling to fight with you, it is because they think it is contrary to their interests or because you have misled them into thinking so. When opponents are unwilling to fight with you, it is because they think it is contrary to their interests or because you have misled them into thinking so. Now, over the decades, however, the opposing forces of Israel, they were trying to deal with these cases, and the Axis has carefully decimated the threatening power projection of Israel, and importantly, has implemented the practice of retaliating in kind when possible. Some notable milestones. This is the Operation Accountability. This was in 1993 when Hezbollah fired missiles on civilian targets in Israel, which deterred Israel from attacking civilian targets inside Lebanon. And then we have Operation Grapes of Wrath. This was in 1993. And again, there was an agreement struck between Hezbollah and Israel in 1996, saying that the targeting civilians is a red line. 2000, the withdrawal from Lebanon under the fires of Hezbollah. Israel was forced to leave Lebanon in 2000 from southern Lebanon. In 2006, again, Hezbollah forced the Israeli occupation forces to leave Lebanon once again after another full-out war and invasion of Lebanon. And then we have the Operation Al-Aqsa Flood, which was an attack by Hamas on October 7, 2023, breaking through the fences and the security fences of Israel. Then we have the Operation True Promise, which was the retaliation of Iran against Israel after bombing the consulate of Iran, and finally Yemen's naval blockade against the Israeli, American, British, and other cargoes going to provide fuel and other sorts of materials to the Israeli occupation state. Now, there is something that I want to mention to you here. I was reading an article today by Thomas Malinen. He was a guest on Syriana Analysis, and I just sent him an invitation if he can come to Syriana Analysis tomorrow. I will just check if he accepted that, and I will just let you know. Hi, Kevork. Okay, he says that it should work tomorrow. I hope so. He is from Finland, and he wrote a brilliant article. Actually, he opened my eyes first by his comment on my video, and this was the video that I posted. This was from yesterday's live streaming, and I said, "Did you know that Israel and Iran have been conspiring for decades?" And the ongoing tensions in the region are nothing but a theater and a bluff. Millions of people do believe this conspiracy theory. And he said, I don't, okay, it's here. He said, I don't contest your view, but I don't think they are the actual main players here. He means Netanyahu. Like, I don't believe for a second that Mossad, Shin Bet would not have at least known on the October attacks. Killing of Ismail Haniyeh, probably by Mossad, made also absolutely no sense to either of the parties. I think that Israel and Iran are being played to engulf the region into a war. CIA and Mossad are most likely not controlled by their governments, like documented beautifully by Jeffrey Sachs in a recent Tucker Carlson interview. So, who is in charge on this continuous cycle of escalation? I have attempted an explanation here, and he posted his article here. So what he basically says that Mossad and the CIA and other international intelligence apparatuses, they are not necessarily tied to the national interests of their own countries, and they're not necessarily tied to the national decision-making process in their own countries, and there could possibly be powers and power structures above the visible power structures that we can see with our eyes, but those powers are invisible. They are not tangible. We cannot really see them. We don't really know exactly who are they, but there could be a powerful people or institutions or group of people are influencing the CIA and the Mossad into waging this type of provocations, conducting this type of provocations against Iran and other players in the region in order to bring the entire region into an Armageddon and World War III type of scenario. So who could benefit from that? Of course, if you see the national interest of Israel, this doesn't serve the national interest of Israel because they will definitely be destroyed. Like, there is no doubt about that. And the Iranians are the same thing. The Israelis have nuclear weapons. They could destroy Iran. But this is from both sides. Iran can also destroy Israel, right? So who benefits from this? If it's not if you're a rational actor and you want to secure the national interests and the security of Israel, you don't want for such a big war, right, in the region. It will destroy you. And same thing with Iran. So is it possible that there are hierarchies beyond the or above the powers that we can see with our own eyes, and those are the ones pushing the region into an all-out war? And this is the article that he published a few weeks ago on his Substack. It's called The Apocalypse Scenario Part 3. It was really fascinating to read this article, to be honest with you. It opened my eyes into a few things, and I would like to share it with you here. So, the author says it is well known that factions in the Israeli government have wanted to regain the biblical borders of Israel. However, war in the Middle East, which the conflict has a high risk of triggering, would have both the ability to utterly derail the global economy and set the world ablaze. Such aims make absolutely no sense unless creating total chaos is the aim. Who could possibly want that? During the past 3 years, I've been more and more drawn to the direction that there is some global force pushing these highly detrimental global developments in motion. So, during the past 3 years, political leaders have made decisions that have been very detrimental and or objected to by the general populace on a global scale. These include multiple corona lockdowns, money printing, which led to the inflation shock, 2 wars, sanctions hurting economies, the woke agenda, and the defarming agenda. Their combination makes no sense in a national political sense because they create havoc. So the question we need to ask is who? What is the force driving them and why? If only applies Occam's razor to everything described above, it yields one clear answer. There must be a very powerful group above parliaments, national elites, and supranational organizations like the World Economic Forum and the Bilderberg, right? Bilderberg Bilderberg Group, pushing its own agenda of divide and conquer. Moreover, the agenda must be exceptionally brutal as it seems to attack all levels of human existence: physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual. The existence of such a group would fit in with what President Wilson described in the 20th century. I just want to give you a quick what Wilson said. So this is what Wilson said basically. This was in 19 probably 13 or so. I just want to. Some of the biggest men in the United States in the field of commerce and manufacture are afraid of somebody, are afraid of something. They know that there is a power somewhere so organized, so subtle, so watchful, so interlocked, so complete, so pervasive that they have better not speak above their breath when they speak in condemnation of it. This is the quote that he wanted to tell us that he is referring to in the 20th century. If such a group over groups with a dark agenda exists, we could describe them as modern horsemen of the apocalypse. This is because they would most likely try to bring biblical plight upon us. If the war in the Middle East engulfs the region, it could easily devastate the world economy. Collapse of modern economies tend to lead to poverty and famine as people lose access to sufficient income. Moreover, food production is under growing strains in many parts of the world. War in the Middle East has the potential to disrupt global supply chains in a way we have not seen for a very long time. The combination of economic collapse, anti-farming policies, and wars disrupting supply chains could lead to famine in many countries. The aim could also be to start World War III, which would bring utter devastation as it would most likely eventually be fought with nuclear weapons. What would be the aim of such biblical plights? To crush the will of the people, because if that happens, people turn into easily controllable robots or zombies. So that's a very terrifying scenario if you think about it. If there is a power above the power structures that we can see with our own eyes, and those are the ones interested in World War III scenario, apocalypse scenario in the region, in order to destroy the global economy and then present the quote unquote solution, digital currencies and small cities, 15-minute cities, and these dystopian ideas that the WAF has been pushing since the so-called pandemic. This could be one of the reasons, right? And if you think about it, it also makes sense somehow. Like all this talk about the pandemic just before February 2022, this was the fashion, and this was something that we used to hear every minute on our TV channels and pushing people into mental desperation, psychological also desperation. And all of a sudden, when the offensive of the Russians started on Ukraine, it's like it's disappeared completely, right? But I will ask these questions to him tomorrow. So he's going to come to Syriana Analysis. Please subscribe to this YouTube channel, activate the notification bell, and expect a brilliant conversation with him tomorrow on Syriana Analysis about this conspiracy, which could be correct, which could be wrong. I don't know. But we're going to discuss it because it's healthy to have a conversation about these cases, because there are so many cases that conspiracy theories have turned to be true at the end of the day. Now I'm going to show you a video of from the page of the Israeli official. Oh, I thought that I downloaded this video. Anyways, so this video is the Israeli occupation state, and they are sending a message to the Lebanese civilians. This is the same Israel Lebanon. Okay, so they are warning the Lebanese against Hezbollah, and they're urging them to turn against Hezbollah. Now, this is the tweet, by the way. Just want to show you the tweet before I play you the video. This is made by the official account of Israel, says to our neighbors in Lebanon, your country has been taken hostage by Hezbollah, a terrorist organization which has wreaked destruction, terror, and instability across Lebanon. Hezbollah is not only a threat to us in Israel, but a threat to the safety and security of the people of Lebanon. Now it's time to speak up. So they're urging them to basically turn against Hezbollah. And I want, if you check the quotes, I think, okay, this is not it. So in the quotes, I just quote posted their video, not really, like I didn't even think of what they call ratioing of a page. Like this is what I said. It said, Israel invaded Lebanon in 1978 when there was no Hezbollah or even an Islamic revolution in Iran. And I received 11,000 likes on this tweet. And the official page has 7,600 likes. So basically, I ratioed them according to the terminologies and the language of X. Now I'm going to play to you the video that the Israeli official site has posted. Take a look.
Lebanon, a country of civilization and culture, has been suffering for years. You, the people of Lebanon, have been taken hostage by Hezbollah, which is part of the Lebanese government. The harbour explosion on August 4th, 2020, destroyed your capital, killed over 200 innocent people, and left thousands more wounded. Hezbollah is responsible for this atrocity, and until now, no one has been held accountable. This is a message for you, the people of Lebanon, our neighbors to the north. There is no land dispute between us in Israel and you in Lebanon. Israel wants peace with you. The problem is Hezbollah and the expansionist Iranian agenda, which has been destroying your country for decades. What is happening to your country is a shame. You deserve better than a life with the militias of Iran. Imagine your life without Hezbollah. Imagine your future without war. We, the people of Israel, can no longer allow Hezbollah to threaten us. It is time to rid the region of Hezbollah. It is time for you in Lebanon to demand from your government that it get rid of Hezbollah and Nasrallah.
So somebody says, what is this, a Hasbara video? Another friend says their propaganda sucks. Another guy says some guy with a British accent. Oh man. And another friend says Lebanon was a Christian Arab country living in peace with its Muslim neighbors before 1947. This man is a liar. He means this video. There were so many even allegations that Hezbollah bombed the port. I mean, it doesn't make any sense. I truly always see who benefited from such atrocities and such incidents, and you know who benefited from it, and whose economy has collapsed, and whose port has become more active after bombing and destroying the port of Beirut. If you check this, you will know who is behind it. How many minutes do I still have? I still have a few more minutes. Now, I'm going to play you a video that I made today. It's a short video, 4 minutes video. And this is going to be posted after the editing and the video processing on my X account. If you want to follow me, you can see my name on the screen, Kevork Almassian. You can also follow me on X. But the topic of this video is Syria. And in Syria, as you may know, the Arab tribes have started an offensive against the American-backed Kurdish militias, the SDF, and also against the American occupation forces occupying the Syrian oil fields. So they managed to conquer a few towns and villages in the eastern shore, on the eastern shore of the Euphrates, which means on the side which the Americans are located, stationed, and they have been occupying our oil fields and our wheat fields as well. So this is a very dramatic development, in my opinion, and this is coming in the context of the struggle of power on the region and also the attempt to kick the Americans out of the region. So I would not separate this from what's happening in Palestine. I would not separate it from what's happening between Iran and Israel, Iran and the United States. This is all in this one struggle of power over the region, and there are different players. However, they have two different axes, I would argue. And the axis, what they call themselves the axis of resistance, Iran, Syria, Iraq, Lebanon or Hezbollah and some of the Palestinian factions and Yemen. Those are the ones who call themselves the axis of resistance, and the rest are, some of them are now in the middle, but the rest are part of the American hegemonic system in the region, and the Syrians are fighting back now against this American hegemony. Now, this is the video, this is the commentary that I made in this case. Did you know that under the rules-based international order, the United States is allowed to occupy other people's territory and oil fields? This is a true story. In 2011, the US had a brilliant idea to oust Assad and install a puppet government in Damascus. And therefore, they supported, funded, and trained different types of jihadi groups in Syria, including multinational terrorist groups in our country. They miserably failed. In 2017, Trump ended the regime change war, and he imposed an economic warfare on the country, harsh sanctions on the people, but he also allowed the stationing of the US troops in our country, occupying 1/3 of the country, occupying the oil fields, looting the oil and sending the oil to Iraq and then selling it in the black market in order to finance their own stay in Syria and also finance a proxy military group that they formed and established called the SDF. Now, the US doesn't need the oil. They don't need the oil of Syria. However, they are holding the oil hostage in order to stop the reconstruction process in Syria, and also in order to spread devastation and desperation and poverty among the Syrian people, because everyone in Syria needs an oil to cook food, for transportation, and also to restart the reconstruction by the factories and the manufacturers which need this oil, right? So it's very important, and it's very important also to generate electricity, for example. This has been the situation in Syria in the past few years. Yesterday, on Wednesday, the tribal forces in Syria, those are Syrians, they are backed by the Syrian army, they waged an offensive against the positions of the American occupation forces and also against the proxies of the United States. In the discourse of this, there could be casualties among the American forces. So I would like really to ask the Americans, why is it okay for an American soldier to come 10,000 kilometers away from his country to our country and loot and occupy our oil? This is an act of robbery, right? If you're an American, I'm sure you agree with me. We do not pose a national security threat against the United States. The US is stationed there, and we don't want for any Americans to die in the discourse of this conflict. Therefore, the best thing to do is to withdraw from Syria and allow the Syrians to recover and to reconstruct. Because if you see the near future, the situation is going to become harder for the United States and its occupation of Syria. Because now that Syria and Turkey are reconciling, Turkey also has an invested interest in kicking the US forces out of Syria, because the Americans are supporting a proxy Kurdish militias in the eastern shore of the Euphrates, and they are encouraging them to form an autonomous entity, something that the Turks also consider a threat to their national security. Therefore, we see that Damascus and Ankara, despite their animosity in the past, they're coming now together and they are talking in order to reconcile. And one of the issues that they are discussing is the stay and the occupation of Syria by the American occupation forces and their support for this and to these Kurdish militias. So in the near future, the situation is going to get worse for the Americans, and it's now the right time for them to withdraw from Syria. But this is my 2 cents. What do you think about it? Do you think that the American forces will withdraw from Syria, or they will be forced to leave Syria by popular resistance? So, will the US occupation forces withdraw voluntarily, or will they be forced to leave from Syria? Let me know your opinions in the comments below, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in to today's live streaming. I really appreciate you all, guys. There are hundreds of you are watching this live streaming. I appreciate you from the bottom of my heart. Before leaving this live streaming, I would really appreciate it if you hit the like button. That helps me a lot. And also check if you're subscribed to this YouTube channel. My goal is to reach 100,000 subscribers this year. With your help, I can do do it, and I would be very thankful if you can do that for me, guys. And if you like to support the independent work I'm doing like this, you can also become a patron. The link is scrolling on the screen, patreon.com/Syriana Analysis. And I will see you tomorrow. Just for you to know, guys, tomorrow 5 p.m. Central European Time, 11 a.m. Eastern American Time, with Thomas Malinen, who I just read his article on Substack about the hidden powers behind the visible, powerful structures that we see with our own eyes. Are they conspiring against humanity? Are they pushing the region into an all-out war? Are they pushing for an Armageddon, an apocalyptic, whatever scenarios? I will discuss all these issues with him. So make sure to tune in tomorrow. Peace be upon you, upon your families. Salam.